It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Well, folks, I'm sure you heard the news. The United States Congress has a favorability rating of 9%. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Lesante. Thank you for joining me on The Sam Lesante Show. My guest today is Congressman Lou Barletta. Now, his ratings are, as of today, 79%. With the conservative sector, and of course 2% with the liberal sector. Today I'd like to have a discussion with the congressman on where we're going, what's happening in this country, and I know a lot of us, sometimes when we hear politicians, we get fed up, we're disgusted, we don't want to know anything that's going on. Unfortunately, folks, did you see your paychecks, your health care? There's a lot of things happening that will affect you, probably already affecting you. And I hope to discuss some of those with the congressman today. Congressman, congratulations on your re-election.
Thanks, Sam. Good to be here again.
I don't know whether that's a good thing or bad thing.
That's a good thing. It's always a privilege, to be able to serve our country in Congress. It's a select few that get the opportunity to do that, so I take it very seriously, and it is an honor.
Every congressman, whether they're Democrats, Republican, every senator Democrat, I applaud them because it's not an easy choice. It's a tough choice. As I mentioned before, 9% favorability rating. Okay, it's sort of like people are like fed up. They're fed up with the nonsense, and sometimes when you don't have a lot of information, we only get tidbits from the press, and unfortunately, as we look at some of the media today, they do have an agenda. It's a liberal agenda. And, it's sad because they don't really give you the both sides, and people will believe that, okay? My mother was one until she realized that they were lying to her. And there are some outlets, I must say, that do try to give both sides, okay? I've been criticized for that. What are your thoughts about that, Lou?
Well, there's no question. It's very difficult to get a message out when the mainstream media is sending a different message. And obviously, the president has a bigger microphone than anybody in Congress, and many times we have to come home back into our districts in hopes to get a message out that the American people will understand. We have to remember, Sam, that the American people voted for a divided Congress. This is what they wanted. They voted for a Democrat Senate, a Democrat in the White House, and a Republican House. So anytime you have a divided Congress, there's going to be some gridlock. Some people believe at the end of the day that it is better because there has to be some give and take and more of a center result from that. But that it also means that there's going to be a lot of arguing back and forth and debating back and forth, and it will take longer to come to a conclusion, which causes a lot of frustration with the American people when they don't see things happening as quickly, and they see what they believe is just total gridlock. And in some cases, Sam, they're right. That is what's happening when you have parties that their ideology could be so far apart from each other. Sometimes it's hard to find that middle ground, but it is necessary to do it.
Well, you still have, I mentioned in the beginning here the paychecks. They just saw them, and some people, even though they're getting less, okay, still are blaming Bush. Okay, so I don't know how many times we can continue to blame Bush, and this seems to be their modus operandi. What they're talking about, he caused so many problems. It's taking so long for us to do that, and that's why we have to give you so much pain, America, because of Bush. Is it true?
No, that's absolutely not true. I mean, Sam, for 10 years, President Bush was vilified for the tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts, as they've been called, for over a decade, and now. 99% of the Bush tax cuts, the Democrats supported. So those who criticize the president for those tax cuts are now basically agreeing that 99% of the 100% of the tax cuts are not a bad idea, and we should continue that. It's just, Sam, there's been a lot of really political posturing, unfortunately, and there are some people who just refuse, really, find areas where there's common ground so that we could get some good. And that happens on both sides of the aisle. That happens with many Republicans who are further right, who believe that we should just stand totally on principle and not agree to anything if it's not what we fully believe in. There are some on the far left that also do not want, they don't want to give in at all. However, the danger of that is that the country pays the penalty and the price for that, where government really moves at a pace that it starts to affect the private economy and private businesses and average people at home. And when it gets to that point, Sam, I think it is critical to see where we can agree to move the football down the field without totally caving into what we believe is right and wrong.
Sometimes you talk to people, in your home, you husband, wife, and kids, and when you're in the house, there's arguments, there's discussions, etc. But when you're outside, certainly you don't bring the dirty laundry outside, and sometimes people hear things and they say, how could that ever happen because Sammy was such a nice guy or Mary was such a nice person or whatever. So with that being said, unless you have, I always say you have to have the full information. You're in the House. That's what you do every day, okay, at least a majority of the time, working in the House. So let's go into the House of Representatives. What transaction there, okay, that we, the public, do not see? Because Ed Barletta, he's a bum. He was against clean air. He wants kids to have masks on them, okay? You remember the ads, okay?
Correct.
And we discussed that. You want to kill kids. Well, the wacko liberals do that, okay? And anything for them to promote their cause, they will do that. And then when you were on this show, you explained everything about that. It's the same thing goes with the Democrats, the liberal Democrats. I'm talking about liberal Democrats. I'm not talking about the wacko liberals, okay? There's a distinction here, okay? What goes on in the House, Boehner, in your workings? What is your day? What do you do?
Well, Sam, we meet as a total conference. Our Republican conference meets with the Speaker, and he's been the type of guy that allows us to voice our opinion, to voice what we think we need to do. But you have to remember there's over 200 of us who all come from different backgrounds and have some different ideas. So it's not always easy for us to get to come to a consensus that seems like we're all totally on the same page. And that's normal in any kind of business. You're not going to have everybody thinking exactly the same. But in general, Sam, we believe that what is best for the country is to keep people's taxes low, to let you have more of your money, to have less government, a more efficient government. I believe, and most of my colleagues in the House believe, that you could spend your dollars better than Washington. When we see the kind of waste, fraud, and abuse that goes on, and how costly it is when government does something versus the private sector, we take the position that wherever we can get government out of the private sector and let private industry do it, they'll do better, they'll do it more efficiently, they'll do it for less money, and they'll be able to hire more people. On the other hand, there's a majority of Democrats who feel strongly about government programs and government involvement and bigger government and government having more control. When you have that, obviously, you're going to come to some real disagreements on the best way to run government. What we do in the House on a weekly basis really is plan on where we could get people back to work and what we could do. Being in the minority, although we control the House, we're in the minority because we can't control the Senate and we don't control the White House.
It looks like you're dealing with a defiant president, a very arrogant, and I'm not saying that being disrespectful, a person who just says, look, I won. This is the way it's going to be. It's my way or the highway. Is that true, or because his approval ratings are high?
Well, my experience has been that this president has been very divisive, has not been easy to work along with, and I say that not in a critical way, but coming from a business background. It's very hard to negotiate with someone when during the negotiation or before you even start the negotiation, they're on television vilifying you and criticizing you and threatening That's really not the best way to go into a give and take situation.
There has to be a reason for that, though, Lou.
Well, you know, the
He's
president
being advised to do something.
the president just came off a victory where he won, not by a large margin, as the media would.
Well, you think he won by
Well, he
10,
wasn't elected,
15, 20
he
million.
wasn't elected king. He
Yeah.
was elected president.
Yeah.
But you know, some of the media believe that this is a mandate. We in the House, I won an election, and I feel that the people that elected me sent me to Washington to do what I campaigned on. So I would be letting the people down that I campaigned on to and my constituents if I simply said, well, the president won, so we're going to do whatever he wants to do. So that's where this divided Congress comes into play. But Sam, remember, he came off a victory. Although not big, he won. That is the time that's called earning political capital. That is the time that any public official that's in position as the president will try to push through his agenda while his approval rating is at the highest point, which is usually right after an election. He will try to push through as many ideas that he has at that time, and that's what we're seeing right now. You know, whether it be gun control and you know, we can go down the list, more spending, higher taxes, whatever the president feels, he's going to strike while the iron is hot, while his approval ratings are high. And that's really where we need to say, well, we got to slow down here and look at this and talk about it and make sure what we do is really what's best for the country and what we all agree on.
Folks, I'm talking to Congressman Lou Barletta from the 11th Congressional District. It's a new Congress, 113 Congress. Come back, folks. We're going to talk about a few things. He mentioned about gun control. Where does he stand on gun control? The Obamacare, okay? We talked about some of the rules and regulations that will be put into effect. And also, folks, my favorite, Planned Parenthood reports record year for abortions. And the last year, 333,964 babies were aborted, folks. Isn't that wonderful? And here's a letter I got from a lady. This is not me, folks, but I want to read this, and I'm sure most of you are going to get very upset with this. And how could I read this? Mr. Lesante, I wonder how many Catholics who sold their souls to Mr. Obama feel about the increase in abortions. After every priest and our bishop pleaded with them to look at the sanctity of life, those Catholics who voted for this baby killer should be very happy that more innocent little babies have been murdered. And I love when they say, I'm against abortion, but if you want an abortion, you can have it. That means I don't want to kill my kid, but if you want to kill your kid, you could. Folks, it's stupid. I want to know why the Congress is paying so much money to Planned Parenthood, okay? And as this lady said, welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Remember, 24/7 SSPTV.com, and welcome all our viewers in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, all the way up to Binghamton, the New York border. And thank you all the cable companies for taking the Sam Lesante Show. 24/7, folks, SSPTV.com. I want to congratulate our production team here at SSPTV.com, Samson Productions, for winning 2 international awards on the documentary we did in the Greater Hazleton area, and also our production department, the Accolade Award, which is a prestigious award, and I want to congratulate them for that. My guest is Congressman Lou Barletta, no stranger to the show, 11th Congressional District. So I mentioned before the break, Lou, see, I'm probably, without question, one of the few people in the country that believe life is the most important thing, then taxes and finances are second, because when you're, you know, God forbid your child's sick, money doesn't become an issue and you're not worried about your taxes or your parents or whatever, then everybody wants to make sure they get the best health care and they could care less about the money. But when it comes to, you know, Planned Parenthood, as I mentioned, Lou, over 1 million babies were slaughtered, okay? And I have here, you know, folks, I guess it's a little difficult. These are 2 little feet. This is 10 weeks. I love when they say that the baby isn't born, it's a mass for 2 months, you know, the Planned Parenthood wackos that want to abort these little things. They pull these little feet apart, okay? And as this lady said, she's congratulating all the Catholics who sold their souls to Mr. Obama, because he is definitely pushing for that, and probably even partial birth abortion. Why is it? Now, here's another thing, Lou, that upsets me. It says here, now Planned Parenthood is supposed to be so great. It said here, their contraceptive services at Planned Parenthood have dropped 12% since 2009, and cancer screenings dropped 29%, but yet their abortions are going through the roof, which means we're funding that. Where's the logic here?
Well, first, Sam, just for full disclosure, I have a 100% voting record for life. So you could tell where I'm going to fall on this issue, and I've voted again that my tax dollars should not go towards aborting what I believe is a life of an unborn child who is defenseless. We talk about the terrible tragedy that happened in our schools where so many children were killed, and when you think of how many babies are killed every single day, where's the outrage for that? I don't believe we should be using tax dollars for Planned Parenthood. I supported defunding Planned Parenthood because of my belief that we should not be using tax dollars to kill unborn children. So that's the way I feel about it.
Lou, I can't understand it. I even talked to some Catholics who say, that's a woman's choice, and some women feel threatened that you're trying to take something away from them. God created, when you plant a seed in the ground, that's what's going to grow, okay? I mean, so that's what God's creation is. When a person finds out and she checks, when she's pregnant, she says, I'm going to have a baby. She doesn't say I'm going to have a fetus, okay? Right. But yet the wacko liberals just want to push that aside. It just blows my mind. Let's move on to gun control because I'll go on a tangent here. Gun control. Where are you at with that?
Well, I support the Second Amendment rights, and Sam, to make the argument that the gun is the problem would then lead you to believe that if we banned matches and lighters, that we would stop arson. That's not the problem. The problem is much deeper. It's a problem with society. There's a lot that goes into what makes a person get to that point that they're going to use a gun or a weapon of any type to commit a murder or a tragic event as we saw. We need to really focus at the root of the problem of what's happening with American culture and how we treat mental illness and what we do to help people and keep guns out of the hands or weapons out of the hands of people that have mental illnesses. But let's also realize, Sam, that I'm one person who believes that we have desensitized our children with much of what they see from the time they are small children, whether it be video games that are so realistic in committing crimes and murder that these children grow up not being able to tell the difference, some of them, between reality and what is a video game, or the sensation of watching somebody die and bleed. And right after the school tragedy in Newtown, I watched 3 or 4 trailers that are in the movies today that were horrible. Yeah. Where's the outrage for that?
Today you said in the news, the president said, what about guns? He doesn't want to do what?
Well, I saw a clip back in 2007 or 2008, or maybe it was even 9, it was 8, where when he was campaigning, he said, let me make it clear, Barack Obama does not want to take guns away from anyone. They don't want to take your rifle, your handguns. I support the Second Amendment.
Now here, I say that for a reason because, again, folks, this is all facts. Go to Google what I'm saying, okay? And folks, for those people, I really would appreciate if you had a pencil and paper out. I want to talk about some sections that I want you to look at so you know that we're just not making these things up. Here's was 2004. Obama opposed gun ban exception to defend one's home. As a state senator in Illinois, President Obama opposed legislation providing an exception to handgun restrictions if the weapon was used in the defense of one's home, okay? Obama's vote would have maintained the status quo, which made it a violation of municipal gun ban law to use firearms to save your own life in your own home, but the bill was passed anyway. Now here's a guy who said, I don't want to take your guns away, but voted for this legislation. I don't know why the press, the liberal press don't go back and like they did with Bush, because remember, Bush is to blame for everything, okay? Let's remember that, okay? He's to blame for everything. When we're looking at Obamacare, I said to them, we had talked about the fact that I was talking to Vic Greco, as you know, before we did the show, and there's some sections in the Obamacare that they're saying that there's a lot of myths that these are not true. The Obama won't lower the cost of health care. Obama's rations health care. They're saying that's not true. Obama establishes death panels. That's not true. Obama is a job-killing law. That's not true. Okay, the propaganda comes out. So, folks, what I ask you to do is write these sections down and then Google the bill, the health care bill. Section 2012, Section 2950, Section 3403, and Section 4001. Now, I'll repeat them. Section 2012, Section 2950, Section 3403, Section 4001, and that'll tell you exactly what you're going to be in for. Your comments, Lou.
Well, I absolutely agree, Sam. We already know for a fact that talking to many businesses that their health insurance costs are going up by 20% already. Some as high as 30%. I've already talked to businesses who said they're making their employees starting to pay for their health insurance, and some who said that they're going to end up not providing health insurance, or they're going to lay people off to get under the 50 employee thresholds. What I'm saying is businesses are now realizing that this is going to cost lots of money and ways that they will not be able to pay it, whether it be either drop employees or drop coverage or make employees pay. This is not going to be cheaper for the American people. We know that. The president knows that. That's why we are taking $500 billion out of Medicare to help pay for Obamacare.
They say that's not true.
Well,
see, they're saying that that's not.
The cost of health care was supposed to go down, and we're already seeing rates go up.
Well, see, here again, when you go back and do what he says, okay, and then what happens, okay, and I know everyone's saying you just don't like Obama. Folks, I pray for the man every day. I just told a good congressman, I'm trying to find one thing that he is doing good for us, okay, especially you seniors. Okay, we know we're killing a lot of babies, and that's wonderful. He loves that, okay, but in the wound. But what is happening as far as Obamacare? And when Dr. Greco sat here, he listed everything. It's in the bill. But I guess probably being in the bill doesn't make any sense.
Well, again, Sam, it's again how the media, some of the mainstream media, how they portray, what these bills will do, and some people who only see snippets and sound bites and go about their life may believe what they hear, and sometimes it's just not the reality of it.
When people say to me, I don't like Barletta, and I ask them why, okay, because he voted for this and he voted for that and he's against this and that. And then when it bothers me because I can't say they're liars, I get you on the show and say, well, look, explain, like the clean air thing where they were saying you're trying to kill kids, and they have these agendas. And I'm praying that someone would educate me on this. I even told my good friend, tell me why this guy is so great. When everyone's losing jobs, when the economy's going down the tubes, small businessmen like me are getting clobbered, okay? And we're trying to survive, but we have people that still think he's the greatest thing because it's all Bush's fault.
Sam, this president has created more debt in the 4 years that he's been there than every president from George Washington to George Bush.
But that doesn't seem to bother anybody.
Well, it's going to bother them when their children and grandchildren are stuck and realize that they're not going to have the same opportunity that you and I had. The tax rates went up for the top 1%. That's what the president wanted, which means he now has more money to spend. The next battle will be the raising of the debt ceiling, which means basically that we can't pay our bills again because there isn't a budget. This government does not have a budget. The president wants a credit card that will allow him to go out and do what he wants without any limits. And then when we hit that, he wants us to raise it again. Well, I'm at the point now where I believe this is where we need the rubber hits the road. I'm one member of Congress that's not willing to say, let's just go ahead and let this government borrow more money and not be responsible enough to have a budget to tell me how much money you're going to spend. Not a blank check that the taxpayers are going to give them, because we'll only be knocking on the doors of the taxpayers asking them that we need more of your money. So I'm one member that's at the point now where before you'll get my vote to raise the debt limit, I want to see budgets, I want to know how much money we're going to spend, and I want to see cuts in spending so that my children and my grandchildren will have the same opportunity that my parents and my grandparents gave to me.
Congressman, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you,
I wish
Sam.
you and all the congressmen and all the Senate and also the President of the United States, who I pray for every day, I mean that sincerely, the very best. It's a challenge, and I would only hope, folks, that you would get more educated in what's happening, okay? No one's going to change my mind on abortion, but you may change my mind on a couple other things that you could present to me. But I want to deal with facts, folks, not hearsay. And once again, I feel sorry for all of those people who voted for abortions. It's sad. It's very sad. So be happy. We killed 1 million babies in the last 3 years, and there's more to come. We'll be right. We'll be back. Stay with us. We have more information on this particular issue in the upcoming Sam Lesante shows. We'll see you next time.